Welcome to Blue Sky Media Connect. My name is Matt Symonds. I'm the founder and CEO of BlueSky Education and the host of the Blue Sky Media Connect conferences. Now, ahead of the conference, I'm sitting down with my dear friend, John Byrne. He's the founder and editor-in-chief of Poets and Quants. John, quite simply, has changed the way that we think about business schools. His dazzling career for Business Week and Fortune, Forbes, Fast Company saw him achieve more cover stories than any other journalist. He launched Poets and Quants 16 years ago, and the site has become the reference for candidates considering business schools, as well as alumni, deans, corporate recruiters, everybody. John published the world's first business school ranking for Business Week. He's the king of biz ed. Well, he is to me, though perhaps he would prefer to be thought of as the Frank Sinatra of our industry, an all-time great. And today we're going to be talking specifically about business school rankings. So sit back and enjoy the voice of the industry.
There's nothing else, not law schools, not med schools, not any other school on the planet that is ranked and rated so heavily as business schools are.
I mean, the idea of schools playing a rankings game, a growing number of schools opt out of rankings, not just business school. We've seen it for law school, med school, university rankings. Is that a signal that the rankings model is broken?
Most gaming isn't, I would say, unethical. Most gaming is smart. So I think, for example, the Rotman School, University of Toronto, if you look at the number of rankings that it participates in, very few. Why? Because it believes that if it just plays to one ranking and does relatively okay in it, it can claim that that's its ranking. And by not playing in the others, it doesn't dilute the effect of the one ranking that it does play in the FT. So they play in the FT ranking, but they won't play in any of the other rankings. And I think that's a strategic decision that is in effect that comes from gaming. And I'm not going to say it's not smart, because if you know, for example, that the metrics in another ranking will show you or give you a lower ranking, why play it? Just get the highest ranking you possibly can based on what the metrics of that given ranking are.
What would your advice be to senior leadership of a business school, to be selective?
Look, I think that rankings are important and they need to be managed, just like quarterly statements for a public company. It's foolhardy to think that you can ignore the rankings and just go about your way. And, if you even look at specs for dean searches, more often than not, the specs will actually explicitly say they want the new dean to make the school rise in the rankings. So it's important to a university, it's important to a business school, it's important to the stakeholders. So to simply ignore it is a big mistake. If you want to know why Stanford MBAs year after year are routinely paid the most to start, all you have to do is look at the employment report and find out how many of them go to private equity, venture capital, and hedge funds. And that's their secret. And then you'd say, well, how come Stanford places more people by percentage in private equity than even Columbia, Wharton, London Business School, or INSEAD? Why? Because they admit more people with private equity experience.
Okay, so quick fire on the current major rankings. As you mentioned earlier, we've lost The Economist and Forbes along the way. US News has updated its rankings after intense backlash. Was that a genuine attempt at reform or a case of too little too late?
I think it was more a case of, my God, if we don't do something, more schools will refuse to cooperate with us, and it will endanger the credibility of the ranking. And so therefore we need to tweak it, which they did. Incidentally, there's a lot of debate about this. By and large, the most important ranking in the US is US News. By and large, the most important ranking in Europe and Asia is the Financial Times. Everything else pales in comparison.
Because your knowledge of these rankings, you've been following the FT rankings now for over a quarter of a century. Again, they've revamped methodology in recent years and now have areas around ESG. You were talking about carbon net zero, campus reporting, and other things. Is that making it more difficult for US schools to participate in the FT ranking?
I'll tell you what's making it more difficult right now. It's the Trump administration. The FT is telling people they will be rewarded if 50% of their class is female, and 50% of your faculty is female, and 50% of your advisory board is female. Well, that, on the basis of the Trump administration, is illegal. So you could argue that the FT is literally asking US schools to do something that currently is not even legal by US standards. I mean, can you imagine a government saying you cannot enroll a single international student? That is what the Trump administration did with Harvard. Sure, a judge overturned it. But the cost, the attention to that, the messaging that it sends to internationals that they may not be welcome in the United States, horrifying.
Right. Fundamentally, with rankings, we should be very much aware of their different methodologies. An interesting place to start, but as part of a much wider research about the schools.
The most value that rankings provide is standardized data. What would I really measure if I did one? And yield rates would be definitely way up there.
Yeah.
Because that is the voice of the people who've been accepted, who are really making a hard choice about whether to go or not. And yeah, it can be influenced by scholarship dollars, but that's okay. If you're accepted to Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton, and you decide you're going to go to Wharton, that's really important information to know. I want to know that the vast majority, I'm talking 90+% of every class, is getting a job within 3 months of graduation, and an incredibly high percent have jobs at graduation.
Now, if rankings vanished tomorrow, what would we be talking about? I suppose one question. But how would the world-class business schools that you track, how would they differentiate themselves in the eyes of global applicants?
For them, I think it's a problem for the schools that are ranked out toward the end of the top 10 and then beyond. That's where it becomes a much more significant issue, because for everyone who aspires to go to Harvard, Stanford, or Wharton, or London Business School, or an INSEAD, most of them won't get in because the numbers don't allow it. So they have to pick another institution, and more often than not, they'll pick that institution based on where it stands in these different rankings. And that's why it's so important.
So AI, disrupting everything. Is it going to disrupt rankings too?
I think it's going to disrupt business education more than it will disrupt rankings. And I think the most vulnerable sector is the undergraduate degree. On graduate level, I see this as a plus, because employers are anxious to have young people who are trained in how to use AI smartly. And to the extent that schools have made this a major priority, they're getting their graduates ready for this new world. And employers need that knowledge and expertise.
John, it's always fantastic to sit down with you and capture those insights and hear that voice. We look forward to seeing you again before we all meet up together in October.